That's quite interesting. Any other questions? No? Cameraman's got a very big lens. What about setting boundaries? How do you set boundaries for your children? Boundaries, see, I've always looked at parenting as being a game. They push, I pull. It's this game, and sooner or later one of us wins. I hope it's me. You know, and you fight this, you play this game till they're like 18, you know. But have you guys ever set boundaries?
I think setting boundaries is really critical to parenting. I look at it, and I share this with parents this way when I used to be a primary school principal, that boundaries are like the runway lines. And if you don't set the boundaries, like a runway line guiding a plane in, your child is going to crash.
Okay.
So if you don't, and the other thing I find for most children, or actually all the children I work with, if parents do set boundaries for them, you actually define a safe space for the child to play with it. You know, but when there aren't any boundaries, it causes them to be a little bit more confused about what they can, should or should not do.
Right.
Now, of course, kids are going to test the boundaries anyway.
They're going to push them, for sure.
Yeah, all right. So, but if you are fair, talk with them about it, explain to them why those boundaries are there, and occasionally they may try to cross it, and if they do, that again opens opportunities for you as a parent to interact with your child.
The other thing that I have found a bit of it's been a problem with me is keeping up with the different technologies that my children use. Not only the technologies, but the language they use connected to those technologies. Half the time I don't understand what they're saying. Never mind where they're going. Did you find that a problem?
Absolutely. I think parents must be open enough. If you don't understand something, ask them. You know, just as we can teach children, our children have a lot to teach us.
Right.
So I think be humble enough to ask them where they go in the cyberspace, and like what Peter said about boundaries. I think in any job, you have boundaries too. But we also must be flexible enough for boundaries to be pushed and for renegotiation.
I think you need to be a little realistic when you set boundaries. Know that these boundaries are going to be pushed. Don't try and be too rigid with a boundary, because all that you're going to do is you're going to end up with a bunch of rebels, I think, and that's going to be an even greater problem.
And sometimes pushing boundaries is good because it shows creativity.
Exactly.
So I suppose you can push parameters without breaking them, and even if they're broken, understand why, and if whichever party is in the wrong, the person will apologize. You learn from that.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Do you think that the average Singaporean parent is capable of that? Because quite honestly, in my opinion, no. I think the average, this is my humble opinion, I think the average Singaporean, when the child does something wrong, the child has got to apologize. But when the parent does something wrong, it's okay, I'm the parent, I don't need to apologize. I think it's true.
Well, it probably is true, but I think the modern parent needs to change the paradigm. You know, because there are things we do wrong. I mean, as a parent, I bring home work, and when my son was growing up, he said to me, "Dad, you tell me I can't use the computer, but you are on the computer all night."
Exactly.
And well, you try to argue and say, I'm doing work here, but then you're not spending time with me.
Yeah.
And I think the discerning parent at that point would stop and say, "Oh, I'm sorry," because children look at love in the amount of time you spend with them. Yeah. So that was something I did for my son, and I think it does help build that relationship. It's not standing your ground and say, "I'm right, you're wrong," and I'm forever right, you're forever wrong.
Yeah.
You know, which wouldn't be the case.
Very interesting. Let's try a little test. How many of you are parents? Can you just raise your hands? All the parents. Just raise your hand. How many of you, keep your hand up. How many of you have ever said sorry to your child? Half the hands went down. It's just a little test. because I find personally that simple, earnest, honest, I'm sorry, actually brings you so much closer to that child, because that child realizes that you're more than a parent. You're real. You're real, and you can make mistakes.
And I think that's especially important when your child becomes a teenager.
Yes.
Because that opens space for communication.
Yeah.
And it respects them.
Also, the child is going to grow up to a parent one day, so the child will model upon what parents do.
They would duplicate,
Yes.
wouldn't they? So if you're a hard stone parent, that's what your child. Chances are that's what your child's going to come out.
I think a recent example of when I had to say sorry to my kid was I had to come home really late after I promised to come home early, and my work just overran for that day, and I called up to say, look, I'm going to be late. He was not qualified at all. This is the younger one, and so he was like, but you promised, and it was like nothing would work. So I said, okay, I really apologize, and then next day I had to make up for it by coming home super early, picking him up from school. I think that's important. I mean, that for me was important to build up the trust again, which
Yeah.
I thought I really had reached.
Yeah.
I mean, there are no excuses if you have broken, it was a very fundamental promise.
Something that was pointed out to me a long time ago. A lot of parents make this mistake. This weekend we're going to go out and we're going to do this. And then the weekend comes along and you go, I'm tired. You have just broken the trust barrier with your child. Whether you're tired or not, you keep that promise. Otherwise the child can't trust you. They can't trust you at all, which is really, really important. Let's move on. Technology. This is a huge argument. Does it unite or does it divide the family?
I think technology is a lovely bridge. Say you want to communicate with your family members. I mean, the mobile is just a way. The laptop is there, the BlackBerry is there, the iPhone is there. If your family members are overseas, technology is also a wonderful bridge. I think it's a tool to an end.
But with the use of this tool, let's just take one element of technology, the SMS. Let's be honest, we speak less these days. Because to anybody, because we don't talk anymore. We SMS. So, where do you stand with that?
I think basically Singaporeans are quite introverted. I think they'd rather SMS than talk face to face. I've seen people communicate through SMS sitting within the same sitting room.
No way.
So the question is, why do we do that? Is it because it's more convenient to talk via a machine? So what is the real problem? The real problem is probably people feel uncomfortable talking face to face. So why do they feel uncomfortable? Probably a lot of us are so unused to talking face to face.
I think we need to do something to help our kids communicate. I was at a party recently, a kids party, and this boy was using the father's iPad, and he was watching episodes of Homie in the Train. I don't know how many episodes. These are like YouTube apps, YouTube clips.
Yeah.
And then he went on the whole evening, almost an hour, just doing that.
He must have
How much
watched,
do
what, 20?
parents communicate with their kids? And I think if we start communicating, talking, speaking to them when they are young, we build the skills in them that will help them when they grow up. But if we already at a very young age hand over an iPad or iPhone to them and just let them interact only with that device, then we do them a disservice.
Well, it's true. The other day I was talking to one of my daughters and I said, why are you always SMSing? Pick up the phone and talk. And do you know what the reply was? It's easier, Dad. It is easier to punch 37 alphabets than to say, hi, how are you? Want to go out? Doesn't make sense.
That's right. That's exactly the danger of SMS and the attraction of SMS, because there is no color, no tone. They can convey an idea, they can communicate a message, but they don't have to worry about whether they said it correctly, whether they said it nicely, whether they would offend it, because the message is bland. It's no tone, no texture. Just like, are you free? As opposed to, hey, are you free tonight? Or,
That's a very
are you free
interesting
or
way of
not?
putting it.
So they don't have to worry about, did I say it right? Did I say it with the right color? It's just a bland. Are you free?
Yeah.
Okay or not? You know? So,
I mean, I've seen people with a WhatsApp application, and they can go on for 3 hours,
okay, that's
back
okay.
and forth, and back and forth, and back and forth, and back and forth, and I'm going, pick up the phone, and the whole thing is done in 45 minutes. You
Oh.
sign the contract at the end of that.
Peter will know this. They like to talk about schoolwork on Facebook now.
Oh, yes.
I mean, like, how is that done? We used to meet up together and just talk our ideas, but they say they can do it on Facebook now.
No, but they can, you see. I have learned this from my children. You can get 17 kids together doing one project, and they
Facebook.
spread all over the island. And it's all on Facebook. Admittedly, they only get C's after that, but still, they do get the job done. The other thing, and I was pointing this out before we came up here, is I'm sure you have all seen this. Parent, child is crying. What does the parent do? Here's my iPhone. And the kid keeps quiet. Why doesn't the parent interact with the child to get the child to stop crying? You've seen it. I think we've all seen it.
Do you know in England they've got this toy with a little slot? It looks like a teddy bear, but it's got a slot for iPhone with a charger.
No way.
I kid you not. I think they call it a woogie.
A woogie.
Yeah.
But you see, if we're going to do this, if we're going to take an iPad or an iPhone and put it in the hands of a 2 or 3-year-old to stop them from crying, are we living a dangerous trend?
I think so. End of the day, I mean, if you are going to do that act, then the child is going to follow you, and the child will do that act when he or she is a parent. And really, you start so young by not communicating to your child, I don't think a relationship is going to form. So you get lots and lots of problems. Technology is just an issue, but I think the whole holistic thing should be, are you even a parent to your child?
Right.
Are you just a bearer of the child?
Right.
Yep.
Jessica, though, you saw someone who used an iPad and it works, though.
Yes, it did. I have a friend who's got a 3-year-old boy. He's just turned 3, and he is a reader now. So that is a success story of iPad. The father downloaded everything for him because the child was brought up really by the grandparents, because both parents work. So the grandparents are the day caregiver. So the parents were very concerned that the child would be missing out on all that interaction from reading. So they downloaded a lot of books on the iPad and all kinds of phonics skills, and the child is a reader by 3. So that is a success story. So I think technology is really a neutral instrument. Like money, it's neutral. It's love of money that's evil. It's not the money. So technology, it's neutral. It's how you abuse it or use it.
Right.
So yeah.
That's quite interesting.
I just want to highlight the point about communicating. I remember when I was studying overseas, and phone calls back to Singapore
Very expensive.
but you can use Skype now.
That's
You
true.
know, and if parents have children overseas, or if the spouse are away, they can still communicate with each other. So technology is not good or bad. It's how you use it.